The Galactic Order had waited 300 years for this day. Supreme Commander Vorath stood on the bridge of his flagship, staring at the small blue planet below. It was the last one. The final human world. After centuries of war, after countless battles, after chasing ghosts across the galaxy, they had finally found them all. The humans had been a problem from the start. They refused to obey. They refused to submit. When the Order told them to follow rules, they asked questions. When the Order demanded obedience, they argued. When the Order sent ships to enforce their will, the humans fought back. Not well, at first. Their ships were small and slow. Their weapons were weak. But they kept coming. Again and again. They lost battles, lost worlds, lost millions of people. And still they fought. Every time the Order thought they were finished, humans appeared somewhere else. A hidden colony. A secret base. A ship full of refugees that became a ship full of soldiers. They were like weeds, growing in cracks, impossible to kill completely. It became an obsession. Vorath had built his entire career on destroying humans. He had chased them across the galaxy. He had burned their colonies. He had killed their soldiers. And still they survived. Until now. Below him, the last human world waited. It was small, barely a colony. A few thousand people, mostly families, mostly civilians. They had nowhere left to run. No hidden bases. No secret fleets. Just this one small planet, alone at the edge of nothing. The humans knew they were going to die. They fought anyway. Ships that should have stayed in port launched toward the Order's fleet. Small, slow, hopeless. They fired weapons that could not penetrate the flagship's shields. They flew straight at enemies 100 times their size. They died, one by one, and still they came. Vorath watched without emotion. He had seen this before. Humans always fought. It was what they did. It was why they had to be destroyed. The last human ship exploded. The sky was clear. All ships, Vorath ordered. Fire on the planet. The Order's fleet opened fire. Weapons that could crack worlds struck the small colony again and again. The surface turned to fire. The cities crumbled. The people, the last humans in the galaxy, vanished in light and heat. When it was over, there was nothing left. Just rock. Just ash. Just silence. Vorath waited for confirmation. Scanners searched for life signs. Nothing. Ships searched for escape pods. Nothing. They scanned the surrounding space for hidden vessels. Nothing. The humans were gone. All of them. Vorath allowed himself a small smile. Then he turned to his communication officer. Send the message. To every world in the Order. The officer nodded. The message went out. Citizens of the Galactic Order. After 300 years of war, the human threat is no more. They are extinct. Rejoice. The response was immediate and overwhelming. On the capital world, celebrations began within hours. Fireworks lit the sky. Music played in every street. People danced and sang and hugged strangers. The war was over. The enemy was gone. On 1,000 worlds across the galaxy, similar scenes played out. Parades marched through cities. Holidays were declared. Children ran through streets waving flags. Old soldiers cried with relief. The long nightmare was finally finished. Vorath returned to the capital to lead the celebrations. He stood on a high platform, looking out at millions of cheering citizens. They chanted his name. They threw flowers at his feet. They called him the savior, the protector, the one who finally ended the human threat. He raised his hands and the crowd fell silent. Today, he said, we celebrate. Today, we remember all who died fighting this war. Today, we honor their sacrifice. But most of all, today, we look forward. To a future without fear. To a galaxy where our children can grow up knowing peace. The crowd erupted again. More cheers. More fireworks. More celebrations. Vorath smiled and waved. He had done it. He had won. That night, as the celebrations continued across the galaxy, Vorath stood alone on a balcony overlooking the capital. He thought about the humans. About their stubbornness. About their refusal to give up. About the way they kept fighting, even when fighting was hopeless. They were gone now. It was over. But somewhere, deep in his mind, a small thought lingered. A question he could not answer. If they knew they could not win, why did they keep fighting? Why did that last ship fly straight at his fleet? Why did those people on the ground not surrender, not beg, not try anything to save themselves? He pushed the thought away. They were dead. That was all that mattered. Below him, the celebrations continued. Music, laughter, joy. Vorith went inside and tried to sleep. He dreamed of fire, of ships flying straight at him, of a face, human, old, calm, looking at him without fear. He woke in the dark and could not sleep again. Across the galaxy, on 1,000 worlds, people celebrated. They did not know about Vorith's dreams. They did not know about the small question in his mind. They only knew that the war was over and they had won. They were wrong. But they would not learn that for a long time. The weeks after the announcement were quiet. Too quiet, some thought. But no one said it out loud. Human ships that had been scattered across the galaxy suddenly went silent. Resistance cells that had transmitted for centuries stopped sending messages. Refugees hiding on various worlds, living in shadows, simply disappeared. Not captured. Not killed. Just gone. The Order sent scouts to investigate. They found empty ships drifting in space. Abandoned bases with meals still on tables. Refugee quarters with beds still warm but no one inside. It was as if the humans had simply walked away and vanished. Scientists scanned every corner of known space for human life signs. Nothing. They checked every frequency for human communications. Silence. They visited every world that had once held humans. Empty. Dead. Overgrown. The evidence was clear and complete. Humanity was extinct. Supreme Commander Vorith received the reports with satisfaction. This was what he had fought for. This was what 300 years of war had achieved. The humans were gone, and the galaxy was safe. He announced a grand celebration on the capital world. The greatest party in galactic history. Leaders from every species in the Order were invited. They would gather in one place to celebrate the end of the human threat. It would be a moment remembered for thousands of years. Preparations began immediately. But in the corners of the galaxy, small things happened. Things that no one paid attention to. On a remote communication relay station, a technician named Vex worked the night shift alone. His screens flickered for just a moment. He looked up. Everything was normal. He went back to his work. He did not report it. It was nothing. On a scout ship returning from the edge of explored space, a sensor operator named Tora saw a blip on her screen. A light in empty space. She checked again. It was gone. She adjusted her sensors. Nothing there. She did not report it. It was probably a sensor error. On a cargo vessel traveling between systems, a pilot named Krell saw something outside his window. A shape. Dark. Moving fast. He blinked and it was gone. He rubbed his eyes. Long shifts. Too much stress. He did not report it. It was nothing. These things happened across the galaxy. Small anomalies. Brief flickers. Things that should not be there and then were not. No one reported them. No one connected them. No one thought about them twice. The humans were gone. That was fact. Anything else was imagination. On the capital world, preparations for the celebration continued. Massive stages were built. Fireworks were assembled. Food was prepared for billions. Leaders from across the galaxy booked their travel. Hotels filled. Security was arranged. Vorith reviewed the plans with satisfaction. This would be his moment. His legacy. The leader who ended the human threat and brought peace to the galaxy. But sometimes, late at night, he thought about the dreams. The fire. The ships. The face. The human face that looked at him without fear. He pushed the thoughts away. The humans were gone. He had seen their last world destroyed. He had watched the scans. He had read the reports. They were extinct. The dreams meant nothing. On the edge of explored space, beyond where the Order's ships traveled, beyond where anyone looked, something moved. It was dark. Silent. Wrong. It did not show on sensors. It did not make sound. It simply existed, waiting. More joined it. Then more. Then more. They did not speak. They did not communicate. They simply waited, watching the lights of the galaxy, watching the celebrations begin, watching the leaders gather. They had heard the announcement. They had heard the celebrations. They had heard the galaxy rejoice at their extinction. Now they waited for the right moment. On the capital world, the great day approached. Billions gathered. Leaders arrived. The stages were ready. The fireworks waited. Vorith prepared his speech. No one looked at the edges of their senses. No one noticed the small anomalies increasing. No one wondered why the flickers were happening more often now. They were too busy celebrating. In the darkness beyond, something watched. Something waited. Something that had been human once, but was human no longer. It remembered the fire. It remembered the death. It remembered the celebration. And it smiled. The capital world was ready. Every building was decorated with lights and flags. Every street was filled with celebrating citizens. Music played from thousands of speakers. Food stands lined every corner, offering dishes from 100 worlds. Billions of people had gathered to witness the greatest celebration in galactic history. The Great Hall stood at the center of the capital. It was massive, built to hold the most important leaders from every species in the Order. They filled the hall now, dressed in their finest clothes, talking and laughing and enjoying the moment. Supreme Commander Vorath stood on a raised platform at the front. Behind him, a massive screen showed images from across the galaxy, celebrations on 1,000 worlds. He adjusted his uniform and smiled. This was his day. The music softened. The crowd grew quiet. Vorath stepped forward to speak. Citizens of the Galactic Order, he began. Today, we gather to celebrate. The lights flickered. Just for a moment. A brief dimming, then bright again. Everyone noticed. No one spoke. Vorath continued. Today, we gather to celebrate the end of. The lights flickered again. Longer this time. The massive screen behind him went dark. Murmurs spread through the crowd. Vorath frowned. He looked toward the technicians in the back. They were checking their equipment, confused. Then the screens lit up again. But it was not the celebration footage. A face appeared. Human. Old. Tired. Lines covered its skin. Eyes deep and dark. It looked directly at the crowd, directly at Vorath, directly at every being watching across the planet. The crowd gasped. Some screamed. Others froze in place. The face spoke. Words in a language no one had heard for months. The language of humans. It echoed through the Great Hall, through every street, through every screen on the planet. Then it stopped. The face tilted slightly. And it spoke again, this time in the galactic common language that everyone could understand. You celebrated our extinction. The voice was calm. Quiet. Terrible. We heard you. Vorath stood frozen on his platform. He could not move. He could not speak. Now we have come to celebrate with you. The screens went dark. For one moment, there was complete silence. Billions of beings, across the entire planet, stood without moving, without breathing. Then someone looked up. The sky was changing. It had been bright and clear, a perfect day for celebration. Now something was happening. The light was dimming, not like night coming, but like something was blocking the sun. Shadows moved across the ground. People pointed upward. Ships were appearing. Not human ships. Nothing like the small, slow vessels the Order had fought for centuries. These were different. Dark. Silent. Wrong. They did not have lights or markings or any sign of who built them. They simply appeared, one after another, filling the sky until the sun was completely blocked. More kept coming. Hundreds. Thousands. More than anyone could count. They made no sound. They fired no weapons. They simply hung there, watching, waiting. In the Great Hall, leaders pushed toward the exits. Guards tried to maintain order but failed. Panic spread through the crowd. Vorath stood alone on his platform, staring at the sky, at the ships, at the darkness. His communication officer ran to him. Sir, all systems are failing. Communications are dead. Power is flickering everywhere. We cannot reach anyone. Vorath did not respond. He was still staring at the sky. On every screen across the planet, the human face appeared again. It did not speak this time. It simply looked. At them. Through them. Into them. Then it smiled. The screens went dark again. Outside, the ships began to move. Slowly. Quietly. Spreading out across the sky until they covered everything. No weapons fired. No attacks came. Just the ships. Just the darkness. Just the silence. And somewhere, in the back of every mind on that planet, a thought took root. They had celebrated extinction. Now something had come to celebrate back. And no one knew what that meant. The ships hung in the sky like a second ceiling. They did not move. They did not make sound. They simply existed, dark and silent, blocking the sun, covering the world in shadow. No one knew what they were. No one knew what they wanted. But everyone felt the same thing in their chests. Fear. Real fear. Vorath stood frozen on his platform in the Great Hall. Around him, leaders pushed and screamed and tried to escape. Guards fought to keep order but failed. The celebration had become chaos. Then the ships acted. Not with weapons. Not with fire. Something worse. The lights went out. Every light on the planet. Every screen. Every street lamp. Every building. Everything. Darkness covered the world like a blanket. Communications died next. Every frequency went silent. No signals. No messages. No way to call for help. The capital world, the heart of the galactic order, was suddenly alone. Power failed. Not gradually, but all at once. Generators stopped. Batteries drained. Emergency systems flickered and died. The most advanced world in the galaxy became primitive in seconds. Weapons stopped working. The great defense platforms in orbit, designed to protect the capital from any threat, went dark. The soldiers on the ground found their guns useless, their targeting systems dead, their communications silent. The galaxy's greatest world was helpless. Silent. Alone. In the darkness, people screamed. They pushed and ran and fell. Fires started in some places, burning without anyone to stop them. The sounds of panic filled the streets. Vorith stood in the blackness of the great hall. His guards had vanished into the chaos. His communication officers could not reach anyone. He was alone, surrounded by darkness, staring at the sky where the ships waited. And finally, he understood. The humans were not extinct. They had not simply survived. They had become something else. Something new. Something that did not need planets or ships or weapons. Something that could appear from nowhere and shut down the most powerful world in the galaxy without firing a single shot. They had been waiting. All this time. Watching. Preparing. Letting the Order believe they had won. And now they had come to celebrate back. The screens flickered to life. Not with power, because power was dead. They simply lit up, glowing in the darkness, showing the same face. The old human. The tired eyes. The calm expression. It looked at Vorith. At the leaders hiding in corners. At the billions of beings huddled in the darkness. You wanted us gone, it said. The voice echoed through every street, every building, every corner of the planet. Not from screens, but from everywhere at once. We are gone. A pause. The face did not change expression. What came back is not what left. Another pause. Longer this time. You should have let us live. The screens went dark. The voice fell silent. The ships hung in the sky, still and quiet. Vorith sank to his knees in the darkness. He thought about 300 years of war. About the colonies he had burned. About the humans he had killed. About the celebrations after their last world fell. He had been so sure. So confident. So proud. He had been wrong. Around him, the city lay in darkness. Billions of beings waited, scared and helpless, for whatever came next. The ships did not move. They did not attack. They simply waited. In the silence, Vorith heard something. A whisper. Quiet at first, then louder. Coming from everywhere and nowhere at once. It was laughter. Soft. Quiet. Terrible. The humans were celebrating back. And the celebration had only just begun. The ships left as silently as they came. One moment they filled the sky, dark and terrible. The next, they were simply gone. The sun returned. Light flooded the capital world. People blinked and looked around, confused, alive, changed. Power returned slowly. Communications flickered back. Screens lit up with news, with messages, with questions no one could answer. The great hall, once filled with celebrating leaders, was empty now. Most had fled. Some had not made it. The floor was covered with forgotten shoes, dropped glasses, abandoned decorations. The capital world survived. But it was not the same. In the weeks that followed, the Order tried to understand what had happened. They sent ships to find the humans, to find where they had gone, to find anything. The ships traveled to every system humans had once occupied. They found empty space. Dead colonies. No signs of life. No signs of anything. Some ships went further. They pushed deeper, beyond where humans had lived, into the darkness at the edge of explored space. Those ships did not return. Not one. Not ever. The Order stopped sending ships after a while. There was no point. The humans were out there, somewhere, but they did not want to be found. And the Order had learned that finding them came with a price. Years passed. Vorith grew old. His hair turned white. His back bent. His eyes, once sharp and proud, became distant and tired. He did not give speeches anymore. He did not attend celebrations. He lived alone in a small house on the edge of the capital, looking at the stars. Sometimes, young officers came to visit him. They had heard the stories. They wanted to know the truth. Vorith told them what he could. One evening, a young woman named Sarah sat with him on his porch. The stars were bright above them, thousands of lights in the darkness. She had come with questions, like all the others. "Commander," she said quietly, "the humans. Are they really out there?" Vorith nodded slowly. "Yes." "What do they want?" He shook his head. "I do not know. No one knows." Sarah looked at the stars. "Will they come back?" Vorith was silent for a long time. When he spoke, his voice was quiet. "They are out there," he said. "Watching. Waiting. We celebrated their death. They celebrated back. Now we wait to see what comes next." Sarah did not ask more questions. She sat with him in silence, looking at the stars, wondering which ones held the humans. The truth was simpler than anyone knew. And more terrible. The humans did not survive the war. Not really. The ones who died on that last colony, the ones who fought and fell across 300 years, they were gone. But something else happened. In the darkness, in the void, in the spaces between stars, the humans who escaped, the ones who fled rather than fight, they changed. They did not build new colonies. They did not build new ships. They did not need to. They became something else. Something that did not need planets to live on. Something that did not need ships to travel. Something that existed in the spaces between, in the dark, in the silence. They became part of the void itself. And they watched. They always watched. They saw the celebrations. They heard the rejoicing. They felt the galaxy's joy at their extinction. And they waited. Not for revenge. Not for conquest. Just for something. They did not know what. They simply waited, patient as the darkness, eternal as the void. On quiet nights, across the galaxy, people heard things. Whispers with no source. Sounds that should not exist. A soft laughter that came from everywhere and nowhere at once. The old ones knew what it was. The humans, celebrating still. Not with joy. With something else. Something that felt like waiting. The Galactic Order never celebrated again. They did not declare victory. They did not throw parties. They simply existed, quietly, carefully, always watching the stars. And every night, as they looked up, they remembered. The day they celebrated extinction. The day something celebrated back. And they wondered, every time they heard a whisper in the dark, if today was the day the humans would finally come. The stars gave no answer. Only silence. Only the dark. Only the waiting.